To bring us an update to the Supreme Court of Canada's decision related to assisted suicide is someone who lives and breathes the work of Jesus Christ in the nation's capital through discussions, lobbying, legislation, issues, working with leaders. I'm talking, of course, with about the head of the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. Now, for 22 years, Bruce Clemenger has been a part of the organization for the last dozen years. You have led as its leader. It's good to see you, my friend. What happened on Friday in Ottawa with the Supreme Court decision?
Significant threshold has been crossed. Up until Friday, basically Canada's law conformed to the Sixth Commandment. Thou shalt not kill, you shall not kill. That changed on Friday.
Wow.
We're now going to, in certain circumstances, condone not only assisted suicide, but also euthanasia. So, significant decision.
When I was first in Canada around in 1993, there was a decision that was made. Can you remind us of that?
It involved a woman named Sue Rodriguez, and she challenged the same laws, the laws that prohibited assisted suicide. Her argument was that as a disabled person with ALS, at a certain point in her life, she'd no longer have the dexterity to be able to kill herself. And Canada decriminalized assisted suicide, or suicide back in 1973. Not because Canada was indifferent to people who wanted to commit suicide, not because we thought it was a good idea, but because if someone tried to commit suicide, the last thing that should happen to them would be brought up in criminal charges. So it was an act of compassion. Her argument was that since able-bodied people can commit suicide, I as a disabled person cannot, therefore I need to have someone be able to assist me. She lost. Supreme Court narrow decision 5-4, ruled against her, and basically said that the overriding principle in Canadian law must be an affirmation of the sanctity of human life. They use that term. We joined with the Catholic bishops. We argued for that, recognition of the sanctity of human life. The court 5-4 said that in Canada, the government has an overriding interest in protecting the life, and promoting life and protecting the vulnerable. And therefore there needs to be a blanket prohibition against suicide and euthanasia. This court, 22 years later, 9-0, reversed that.
So what is the framework of this? We've talked about in our culture for decades, doctor-assisted suicide. Is that part of this, or is it coming down to a family's decision about their loved one? What's the framework in which legally this operates now?
A bit of ambiguity. The Supreme Court used the word physician-assisted death, so it implies that medical professionals will be involved. It implies that perhaps the healthcare system will become involved, which means public money will become involved. And basically it's not just assisted suicide. That's where a doctor or someone provides the means of someone killing themselves, but that person kills themselves. It's not just the suicide, but actually it's the administration of medication as well. So that means that in some situations a doctor can give the needle, can administer the medication themselves. So that crosses the line from assisted suicide to euthanasia. So a lot of ambiguity. The court framed out certain criteria that they thought should apply, that someone needs to qualify for assisted suicide or euthanasia. But those terms are somewhat vague. And so it's up to Parliament now to craft a regime under which this will become legal in limited circumstances.
So what happens next with Parliament? Because even here I know that whether one is left, center, or right, there's some troubling issues here for people to have to deal with in leadership. One leader, if I can borrow a quote from him, he said, it goes beyond social conservatives. It's people, for whatever reason, their moral compass is saying it is wrong to actively be involved in the death of another person. This leader says, I've talked to people who are liberals, who are conservatives, who are atheists, and who are theists. So this isn't going away.
No, not at all. The court gave the government 12 months. Basically, they took the section that deals with assisted suicide. They said, in some situations, we don't think this law should apply. So they framed out generally what they thought, where they thought the law shouldn't apply. But the government now has 12 months to redraft the legislation to clarify when it's illegal to assist someone in suicide and when it's legal. Assisted suicide is counseling to commit suicide, but also providing a means to commit suicide. And so there's a lot of work.
Because that is a healthcare issue, then is that something government pays for?
Well, that's the question. The Supreme Court used the word physician-assisted, which implies that physicians need to be involved, and that would imply in Canada that the healthcare system becomes involved. And so this is public funds. The medical profession, so the Canadian Medical Association has already said we need to start looking at how do they understand this? Will they allow their doctors to commit euthanasia, to be involved in assisted suicide? What about the conscience of doctors who are fundamentally opposed to the taking?
Would they be forced? Yeah,
That's
so many open-ended questions.
Yeah.
So, Evangelical Fellowship of Canada, you represent us as an organization, and we thank God you do, and you have so faithfully for decades. You represent us in the nation's capital in Ottawa. What do you anticipate your role being in the days ahead, and how can we come alongside who struggle with this decision, and how can we come alongside and encourage you, help you, serve you in the coming years? There will be legislation that will be written.
We need, one, to encourage the government to act quickly. The court gave them 12 months to resolve this issue. We have a federal election coming up in October. So that means there's a lot of time will be taking up. Parliament will be adjourned. There'll be a whole process of election, then new government put in place, whether it's the Harper government or another leader.
Government.
So time's waiting. The Supreme Court did the same thing on the prostitution case. It took them pretty well 11 and a half months to get the prostitution laws back in place. So time's of the essence. The government needs to move quickly. And what we need to do is we disagree with the decision, but it's constitutional the way the Supreme Court has interpreted it. So we need to ensure that assisted suicide and euthanasia are very rare. So we need to work hard to ensure that the safeguards are put in place to make sure that vulnerable people are not caught up in this, and that people who deeply disagree with this are not required to participate.
Do people? We have the EFC website up and going here. What can people in Grassroots Canada do? You know, I talked to Joy Smith about her legislation as to the changes, or their legislation related to the prostitution laws. What can we do in letting our members of Parliament know in our own writings our concern, our upset over this? What can we do, and how can EFC help us?
Best thing to do is write a letter to your MP and copy the Prime Minister, Minister of Justice on it, Peter MacKay. Express your deep concern over the decision and urge them to move quickly to ensure that situations of assisted suicide euthanasia are very rare. The secondary thing is we need to win over the hearts and minds of Canadians. I know in the United States there are some states that have moved towards assisted suicide euthanasia, but often when there's a public debate and people understand what's at stake, people step back from that threshold. So we need to engage with their neighbors. The last thing we need to do is ensure that palliative care is accessible. Only between 16 and 30% of Canadians have access to good quality palliative care. A lot of the requests for assisted suicide or euthanasia comes from people who are suffering pain, and that need not take place.
And palliative care, hospice care, how is that structured? How is that worked out? Who pays for what?
Not only who pays for it, but make sure the good quality care is there. Majority of palliative care physicians are opposed to this. You know, they're in the trenches. They know what good pain management looks like.
That's right.
And they're quite confident that the person in intolerable pain is extremely aware if it ever occurs, if you have good quality palliative care. So there's a number of things.
My father, who is 90 right now, is in palliative care, and we are grateful for those caregivers. It makes a difference to have that kind of dignity as they transition from here into eternity.
We believe in the sanctity of human life, and we need to live that out and make sure that life is respected, affirmed, cherished, and that when someone comes to the end of life or suffering a disease, an illness, a disability, that we meet them with compassion and care and love.
We will be praying for you, and please let us know how we can serve you through 100 Huntley Street. Thanks so much, Bruce Clemenger, the President of the Evangelical Fellowship of Canada. Pray for this man and his team.